These are Crabapples. They're much smaller and more sour than regular apples, but they're also very high in pectin, which makes them perfect for making jelly. Today I tried to make crabapple jelly. Unfortunately, it didn't quite set. So I ended up with a crabapple syrup, but that turned out to be really useful. Crabapple trees are usually about half the size of a normal apple tree. They can also be a little bit more gnarled and spiky. Their fruit are usually about the size of a golf ball or smaller, right down to the size of a pea. And they can come in all sorts of colors, from green and yellow to deep red. They're often planted as an ornamental for their beautiful appearance. It can be difficult to tell them apart from cherry trees, as they both blossom in spring with white to pink flowers with 5 petals. Cherry trees will have darker colored bark. They also bloom a little earlier in spring, even before they've grown all their leaves. The flower petals will have a little notch in the top, and they don't have an aroma. But crabapples have a very fragrant, sweet, flowery aroma. Their bark is a light gray color, and the flower petals are more round. The fruit can look almost identical, but cherries are a stone fruit, so they have 1 seed at their center. Apples will have 5 seeds. If the seeds are white or green, they're not quite ripe yet, until they start to turn brown. I just harvested a whole bunch of crabapples, and I even picked some from 3 different trees, but I focused on this main one with bright red fruit. I either picked them straight off of the tree or gave the tree a little shake to loosen the fruit. And I made sure that the fruit that I'm picking up off the ground were ones that I fell myself. I just discarded any fruit that were bruised or damaged or had little holes, because those are burrowing insects. I ended up harvesting a couple pounds of fruit, or what looked to me like little under a gallon. Once I got them home, I gave them a nice rinse and then added them to a large pot. So to make our crabapple jelly, which turned out to be a syrup, I added a few inches of water in the bottom of the pan, not enough to cover the fruit or to make them float, but enough to help them cook properly. Brought it up to a boil and cooked it for about 10 to 15 minutes. Then mashed the fruit, let it boil again for another 10 minutes or so, and then strained out the fruit. And here it's recommended that you use a jelly bag or cheesecloth, which I did not have. So I ended up using a portion of an old torn bed sheet. I made sure it was nice and clean. I even boiled it. And you want to wet the cloth first so that you get more juice. And filtered out all that delicious juice. And it had such a beautiful red color because I'm using bright red crabapples. Most recipes recommend you don't squeeze the bag for a nice clear jelly. But if you don't squeeze the bag, you're missing out on a lot of extra juice. I'd recommend you wait about a half an hour to let the bag cool, because when I did it, it was way too hot. I poured the juice back in the pan. I ended up with a little over 4 cups of juice, to which I added about 1.5 cups of sugar. Most recipes called for a little bit more, like 3 cups, but I wanted to try it with a little bit less sweetness. And again, I brought this up to a low simmer, and the goal here is to get it to about 220 degrees. Then I added a few tablespoons of lemon juice. This supposedly helps the pectin to gel. And from here you can pour it into jam jars or large jars. You can do a canning process so that it's shelf stable. But I was going to use this right away, so I'm going to store mine in the fridge. But when I checked on mine the next day, it was still very liquid. I cooked it again for about 10 to 15 minutes, but after another day, it didn't set again. But I didn't want to add any extra pectin. I wanted to see if I could get it to gel with just the fruit. But I think it was a bit of a happy accident because the syrup turned out really good. It tastes phenomenal. It's sweet and sour. It has that beautiful, bright, pinkish red color. Just gorgeous. It did thicken up a little bit, so it's actually really useful for sauces. You could probably just use it plain as a dipping sauce. It's so tasty. I made a wonderful sweet and sour sauce. So I just added some of the syrup to a pan, along with some vinegar, soy sauce, ketchup, red pepper flakes, and cornstarch as a thickener. Just whisked it together and brought it up to a simmer to thicken. And this is phenomenal. It's almost like a barbecue sauce. It's tangy and sweet and sour and savory. Oh man, it was really, really good. I also made an Italian soda, which is just some crushed ice where you pour over the syrup and then add club soda, and sometimes a splash of cream, but I left that out. I made a yogurt parfait with a drizzle of our crabapple syrup and a little sprinkling of pumpkin seeds. That was really good. And doesn't that look amazing? And finally, I made a little apple lemon cake and just drizzled some of our crabapple syrup on top. So it turned out to be really useful. I just kept thinking of things I wanted to try with it. So even though my jelly didn't turn out, the crabapple syrup was a huge success. If you enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments or with a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.